Have you ever noticed how easy it is to blame the world when life isn't going the way you hoped? We point to circumstances, to other people, to timing, anything but ourselves. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Nothing changes until you do. The Stoics believe that freedom doesn't come from controlling the world outside, but from mastering the world within. Imagine if, instead of waiting for life to fix itself, you decided today to take radical ownership of every choice, every action, every moment. How different would your life look a year from now if you stopped handing away your power? If you're done drifting through life, it's time to take the wheel. Subscribe not just to this channel, but to your own discipline, your own clarity, your own growth. Every step toward mastery is a step toward becoming who you were meant to be. And that journey starts now. People love to believe that success belongs to the gifted. It's comforting to think that some people were simply born with something special the rest of us can't reach. As if their lives were written in the stars, and ours were left to wander in the dust. But if you look closely, that belief is nothing more than an illusion. It is a story we tell ourselves to excuse our own lack of effort. The Stoics would remind us that talent is far less powerful than discipline, and discipline is available to everyone. A seed, no matter how rare or valuable, will never grow if it isn't placed in soil and watered. The same is true for you. The potential you admire in others isn't magic. It's effort stacked on effort, day after day, often in silence when no one is watching. What makes this illusion dangerous is how easily it becomes a cage. When we convince ourselves that talent is destiny, we quietly surrender before the battle even begins. Think about how many times you've looked at someone's success and said, "They're just lucky. They're just gifted." That thought feels safe, doesn't it? Because if success is only about natural ability, then you don't have to hold yourself accountable for the work you haven't done. You don't have to ask why you've avoided the discomfort of discipline. But every time you choose that excuse, you trade the possibility of growth for the comfort of surrender. And the truth is, comfort has never created greatness. Seneca once said, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." What he meant is that those who look lucky are usually the ones who prepared, often for years, while the rest of the world looked away. Carl Jung believed that each of us carries more within us than we often allow ourselves to see. He wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." If you are waiting for proof that you are capable before you act, you will wait forever. Clarity doesn't come first. Action does. Once you begin, once you face the grind and the discipline, your vision sharpens. The illusion of talent fades, and you begin to see that what you thought was unreachable was simply neglected inside you, waiting to be cultivated. Every person you admire began uncertain, flawed, and ordinary. The difference is that they refused to stop. Think about the craftsmen who built cathedrals that took generations to complete. Most never saw the final masterpiece. They laid one stone upon another, trusting that the act of building was worth more than recognition. That's what discipline looks like in practice. You don't measure your worth by how gifted you are on day one. You measure it by how many times you return to the work, even when no one claps, even when the results come slowly. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. Freedom isn't in waiting for a talent you may never see. It's in mastering the choices you make each day, especially the smallest ones. So ask yourself, is it really true that you lack talent? Or is it that you have refused to nurture what you've been given? Every time you dismiss yourself with the thought that you aren't naturally gifted, you are watering the weeds of doubt while starving the seeds of your potential. There is no person alive who doesn't carry something worth cultivating. The difference is in who chooses to nurture it with action. If you rise early to practice your craft, if you persist through boredom and failure, if you refuse to quit when the results don't show, what looks like talent will grow. Others may call it natural, but you will know the truth. It was built, not born. The illusion of talent will keep you small if you let it. It will whisper that you can't, that others were chosen, and you were not. But look deeper, and you will see that those who rise are rarely the most gifted. They are the most disciplined, the most consistent, the ones willing to pay the price of effort every single day. The world will always celebrate the outcome and call it talent. But you will know, if you choose the harder path, that it was forged through discipline, sharpened through resilience, and sustained by a simple decision not to stop. And maybe that is where the true test lies. The question isn't whether you were born with enough talent. The question is whether you are willing to nurture the little you have until it becomes more than enough. Because greatness is not a gift. It is a responsibility. And if you take ownership of that responsibility, you will find that what once felt like limitation was the very thing that taught you how to grow. It's easy to speak about accountability when life feels calm. In theory, the word itself sounds strong, noble, and even inspiring. But when the alarm rings before dawn, when the tasks of the day stretch endlessly before you, when nobody is there to watch or applaud, that's when the real weight of accountability reveals itself. In those quiet moments, the shine of the word fades, and what remains is the raw question of whether you will follow through on the promises you whispered to yourself in easier times. True accountability is not glamorous. It's not a motivational quote on a wall or a quick burst of energy after hearing a speech. It is the grind of showing up when it would be simpler not to, the discipline of carrying the load no one else can carry for you. That heaviness is why so many people talk about accountability but never really practice it. It feels uncomfortable because it strips away excuses. You can no longer say, "I didn't have time," or "I wasn't given the chance," when the mirror asks you plainly, "Did you do what you said you would do?" Marcus Aurelius captured it with sharp simplicity. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In the same way, waste no more time debating what accountability should look like. Either you act, or you don't. Either you honor your word, or you betray it. There is no middle ground. And yet, this weight is not meant to crush you. It is meant to strengthen you. Think about lifting heavy stones. At first, the strain feels unbearable, but over time, the very act of carrying builds the muscle that makes the next stone easier. Accountability works in the same way. Every small act of follow-through, whether it's finishing the workout you didn't want to start or sending the report you promised, builds a deeper trust in yourself. You begin to realize that your word has weight, and that realization is quietly life-changing. Because once you know you can depend on yourself, you stop waiting for permission from others. Still, there is a reason it feels so heavy. It demands more than action. It demands honesty. To be accountable means you cannot hide behind appearances. It means acknowledging where you fell short without disguise and choosing to try again. Seneca warned us that most men are not truly free because they live for the opinion of others. Accountability frees you from that trap. It forces you to care less about applause and more about integrity. Do you act because it's right, or only because someone is watching? That question cuts deeply because it forces you to examine your motives. And it is in that examination that real growth begins. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Accountability is the act of looking inside with unflinching eyes. It is the daily awakening to the fact that you are responsible for your actions, your choices, your time. This awakening can feel painful because it removes the comforting illusion that circumstances or other people are the reason for your stagnation. But at the same time, it gives you back your power. If you are responsible, then you also have the power to change. The heaviness of accountability is also tied to its loneliness. When you stand accountable, you often stand alone. Others may not understand why you push yourself when no one demands it. They may not see the point of the quiet sacrifices, the hours spent in practice, the discipline maintained when it seems unnecessary. But that solitude is not weakness. It is the ground where character is formed. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Accountability is examination in action. It is the process of constantly testing whether your choices align with the life you claim you want. And that process, while lonely, creates an unshakable foundation. Over time, accountability transforms from weight into freedom. At first, it feels like chains binding you to commitments that no one else sees. But slowly, you realize those chains are made of your own discipline, and they hold together the structure of your life. Without them, everything collapses. With them, you can stand firm, no matter how strong the storm. So when accountability feels heavy, remind yourself that heaviness is the point. You cannot grow strong without resistance. You cannot build trust in yourself without being tested. Accountability does not exist for the easy days when motivation carries you forward. It exists for the days when motivation is gone, when fatigue sets in, when no one else will notice whether you succeed or fail. Those are the moments that define you, not because others are watching, but because you are. The truth is, accountability will always feel like a burden until you understand it is also a gift. It is the quiet proof that your life belongs to you. And though it weighs heavily at times, it is that very weight that shapes you into someone unbreakable. The question that remains is simple but piercing. When no one is watching, when the applause has faded, when it is only you and the choice before you, will you still act? Imagine sitting across from someone you deeply admire, a mentor, a guide, the kind of person whose opinion carries weight because they live the life you respect. Now imagine laying out your entire week in front of them, hour by hour, choice by choice. No filters, no excuses, no explanations, just the raw truth of how you spent your time. Would you hold your head high, confident that your actions matched your ambitions? Or would you feel the sting of shame, shrinking under the quiet realization of how much of your life was given away to distraction, to delay, to things that do not truly matter? This is the mirror test. It is not about judgment from others, but about whether you can look at yourself without flinching. Time is the currency of life, and yet it is the one resource we spend most carelessly. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The mirror test forces you to ask whether you've been a faithful steward of that resource or a careless spender. Every hour you waste is not just time lost. It is life lost. And once it slips away, it never returns. Most people think of accountability as holding themselves to tasks or goals. But in reality, it begins much deeper. It begins with the recognition that your time is your life, and how you spend it reveals what you truly value. The unsettling part of the mirror test is that it doesn't let you hide behind your words. It doesn't care about your intentions or the promises you made to yourself. It only reflects what you actually did. If you said you wanted to get healthier, but spent your evenings scrolling endlessly instead of moving your body, the mirror will not lie. If you said you wanted to build a business, but your hours were poured into entertainment, the truth will be clear. Carl Jung once observed, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." That line cuts through all illusions. The mirror test is the place where your actions either align with your vision or expose the gap between who you claim to be and who you truly are. This is why the test feels so heavy. We are experts at justifying our choices to ourselves, bending the truth so we can feel comfortable. We tell ourselves that rest is deserved when it is really avoidance, that tomorrow will be different when tomorrow is only a repeat of yesterday. But the mirror does not accept excuses. It only reflects what is. And that reflection can either be a source of pride or a source of discomfort. Both are valuable because one encourages you to continue, and the other forces you to change. Imagine for a moment that you had to explain every decision of your day to someone you deeply respect. Would you feel comfortable saying, "I spent 3 hours lost in meaningless distraction," or "I gave up when things got difficult"? The thought of that conversation is uncomfortable, but that discomfort is precisely the point. Epictetus taught, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The mirror test is nothing more than holding your life against that standard. Are you doing what you must to become who you claim you want to be? And yet, the mirror is not there to condemn you. It is there to awaken you. If you see wasted hours, that does not mean you are broken. It means you are being shown where to improve. It is a reminder that every day is a fresh chance to redirect your energy. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that his time was short and that every day could be his last. To him, this was not a reason for despair, but for urgency. To wake up and realize you have been careless with your hours is not the end. It is the beginning of change. This practice requires courage. It is not easy to see yourself clearly. Most people avoid it by keeping themselves endlessly distracted because silence and reflection bring uncomfortable truths. But it is in that silence that you find your direction. When you begin to take this test seriously, you realize how powerful it is. The hours you once wasted begin to weigh differently because you know you will face them later in the reflection, and slowly you become more intentional. You begin to ask, if I had to justify this moment, would I feel proud or embarrassed? That simple shift can transform how you live, not because others are watching, but because you are. The mirror is always there, silent, but unrelenting. So, how much of your life do you let slip away unnoticed? That question is not meant to haunt you, but to remind you of the gift you've been given. Time is limited, fragile, and sacred. When you honor it, you honor yourself. The mirror test is heavy because it strips away illusion. But it is freeing because it gives you clarity. And with clarity comes strength, the strength to align who you are with who you want to be. Excuses are some of the most convincing lies we tell ourselves because they wear the mask of reason. I don't have time. I don't have support. I don't have the resources. On the surface, these statements sound rational, even responsible. But when you strip them down, they are all the same, an attempt to escape the weight of responsibility. They let us feel justified in doing less while still holding on to the illusion that we wanted to do more. The problem is that excuses may protect our comfort in the short term, but they quietly steal the life we could have lived. Excuses are seductive because they shift the blame away from us. They allow us to imagine that the reason we're stuck has more to do with outside forces than with our own choices. But if you look closer, you'll see that they create a pattern of giving away your power. Every time you say, I can't, because you hand over the control of your life to something outside yourself. And little by little, you stop believing you have the ability to shape your future. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Excuses deny that truth. They convince you that the problem is always out there when the real solution has always been in here. What makes excuses so dangerous is not just that they delay action, it's that they become part of your identity. The more you repeat them, the more you start to believe them. You convince yourself that you are too busy, too unsupported, too underprepared. And eventually, you stop even questioning whether those things are true. You simply live by them as though they were laws written into your life. This is the subtle prison of excuses. You create the bars, you lock the door, and then you complain about being trapped. The truth is, everyone has reasons not to act. Everyone has obstacles, responsibilities, and moments of weakness. What separates those who grow from those who remain stuck is not the absence of obstacles, but the refusal to let excuses define them. Excuses also thrive in comparison. We look at others and say they had better opportunities, they had more support, they started with more talent. And maybe some of that is true. But the Stoics would remind us that life is not about what you start with, but about what you do with what you have. Socrates taught that he who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have. In other words, if you are waiting for conditions to be perfect before you act, you will never begin. Excuses feed on this illusion of perfect timing. But there is no perfect moment. There is only now, and the choice to act or avoid. Think of the hours you have lost to excuses. How many dreams have you delayed because you told yourself the timing wasn't right? How many chances have slipped away because you convinced yourself you weren't ready? Every excuse feels harmless in the moment, but over time, they pile up into regret. And regret is nothing more than the voice of accountability that was ignored for too long. The mirror of your life does not reflect what you wanted to do. It reflects what you did. Excuses cannot be seen in that reflection, only the absence of action. The challenge is to see excuses for what they really are, thieves of your time, energy, and potential. Once you name them, they lose some of their power. They stop sounding like logic and begin to sound like avoidance. And in that moment, you reclaim something vital, the ability to choose differently. It will never feel easy. Excuses will always whisper because they know the path of action is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not your enemy. It is your teacher. The Stoics embraced discomfort as a way to grow stronger, to test themselves, to prove that their character was not dependent on ease. When you stop listening to excuses, you begin to see obstacles not as reasons to quit, but as opportunities to rise. And slowly, the very weight that once held you back becomes the resistance that builds your strength. So the next time you hear yourself say, "I don't have time," or "I don't have support," pause and listen carefully. Ask yourself if those words are truth or if they are simply fear in disguise. Remember that excuses, no matter how convincing, do not protect you. They rob you. They take from you the life you could have lived, the potential you could have realized, the future you could have built. And the moment you decide to stop believing them is the moment you take your power back. There is a subtle but crucial difference people often forget, one that can determine whether you move forward in life or stay stuck. That difference is between shame and disappointment. Shame whispers that you are broken, that something is wrong with you at your core, that you will never be enough. Disappointment, on the other hand, simply tells you that you fell short this time. Shame is heavy and paralyzing. Disappointment, though uncomfortable, can be the spark that fuels growth. And yet, most of us confuse the two, punishing ourselves when we should be learning, drowning in self-pity when we should be adjusting our path. The Stoics would remind us that our mistakes are not proof of our worthlessness, but opportunities to refine our character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Shame takes a mistake and interprets it as proof of your inadequacy. Disappointment takes that same mistake and interprets it as a lesson. The event does not change. It is your judgment of it that determines whether you will crumble or grow stronger.